Hi, and thanks for joining us today. My name's Janet King, and I'm the VP of Research at Horizon, which is the parent company to American Banker, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. As banks continue to mature in their digital journey, the customer remains front and center as the driver of key transformation initiatives. Yet many institutions are struggling, frankly, to integrate digital banking tools with their existing cybersecurity and compliance technology, both areas that ultimately impact customer experience. Today, we're going to be drawing on research that we recently completed with our editorial team at American Banker. Research was sponsored by Onfido, and it's on the state of digital banking. And our goal really of our conversation today is to hopefully leave you with some peer-based insights that you can use to inform your own digital transformation strategies. So joining me today to discuss this research and the implications for leaders who are trying to stay current in a rapidly changing environment is Nate Skinner. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at Onfido. So welcome, Nate. Can you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Onfido?
Yes, thank you, Janet. Glad to be here. Nate Skinner, as you mentioned, Chief Marketing Officer for Onfido. Onfido is in the business of making digital identity verification simple for everyone, including, of course, banks. And so many of our customers are looking for ways to kind of transform their technology and make sure that they're both allowing good customers in and also preventing bad actors from entering their system and using their services. So we're excited to partner with you on this research and looking forward to speaking with Snigdha.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Nate. Such an important body of work that you guys are doing, those solutions that you're putting out in market. So I also want to introduce Snigdha Signh, who's the Group Product Manager at Remitly, and we're thrilled to have you joining us today, Snigdha. Can you just take a minute to also introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what Remitly does?
Yeah, thank you, Janet, for having me here today. I'm Snigdha Signh. I'm a Group Product Manager here at Remitly. Remitly is a leading digital financial service provider for immigrants and their families. We serve customers sending money from and to 170 countries around the world. Our native cross-border remittance app eliminates wait times, complexities, and fees associated with traditional remittance processes. And here at Remitly, I lead a team building innovative solutions on our risk and compliance platform. Super excited to be here with you and Nate today.
Great, thank you. I cannot wait to hear your perspective on some of these topics. I think it's going to be very interesting and insightful. So to just kick things off today, I just want to give everyone joining us a tiny bit of context and a little background on the state of digital banking research. So this is research that we conducted in April of this year among 200 management level respondents from a mix of global, national, regional, and community banks, as well as credit unions. So wide mix there. And our goal for the research was to really better understand where banks across the sector are on the digital banking maturity curve and how that progress matters as you work to position your bank or your credit union for growth. And a majority of the banking leaders participating in the research hold VP level or higher titles, and all of them are personally involved in leading or executing on those initiatives. And the banks involved spanned all sizes, but 4 in 10 are from mid to large size banks with assets of 20 billion or more. And more than half of that cohort has assets of $100 billion or more. And all of that is really to just say that the results reflect the opinions of digital stakeholders from banks across the ecosystem. So Nate, before we dive in, can you just take a minute to talk about why Onfido was interested in partnering with us on this research? Because I think that context could be helpful as we share some of the key learnings from the research today.
Yeah, Janet, I mean, it's, one of the things that we focus on Onfido is our customers and the voice of our customer. Onfido is globally the #2 recognized ID verification provider, and we're #1 in the UK, but we're not #1 in the US. And so one of the attractions of working with the American Banker team and with you on this research was understanding customers and the differences between this American market and our European customers. We have customers everywhere from HSBC and Barclays and Revolut and Remitly across the financial services kind of spectrum. But banks are one of those that are a key part of our our initiative, and we want to listen and understand them more closely. And that's what this really was all about.
Awesome. Well, it's been fun partnering with you guys on this. So let's dive in and really start by looking at the digital banking progress that's being made. So if we look at institutions across the banking sector, what we see is sort of a tale of two banks, if you will, with global, national, and regional banks really leading the charge when it comes to execution, while credit unions, and to a lesser degree, community banks, most often characterizing their progress as nascent or developing. So what does that really mean, though? From our definitions, banks who are nascent or developing in their digital banking efforts are really just starting to get out of the gates. They mostly all have mobile apps, but they're really focused on enhancing their physical and online experiences with mobile, rather than taking a mobile-first approach to drive measurable impacts. That group, the latter group that's taking that mobile-first approach, would be considered among our transforming banks. And then the most digitally mature, or those classified as leading, are those that are really using mobile to create new services or reinvent business models to drive growth. That's how we sort of mapped this maturity curve, if you will. And Nate, I think it's really interesting that some of the banks seem to have turned the corner, and they're definitely extracting real value to the business from their digital initiatives. And others are still at the starting gates or just approaching that first turn, if you will. So what do you think is contributing to those differences? What's enabling some to lead and holding others back from advancing those digital initiatives?
Yeah, Janet, I really think this kind of is the tale of the customer. That these are banks that are looking at their customer base and their initiatives and strategies and having to kind of be proactive about achieving their goals. So it's not surprising to me, for instance, that global banks and national banks whose customers are all over the world potentially are transforming and leading this effort to transform or digitally transform their businesses, because kind of in a post-COVID world, you can reach customers everywhere with an internet connection and a phone. So that to me tells me a lot. It says that it depends on who their customers are. You compare, for instance, a global national bank's kind of the way that the chart shows to the community bank. Well, a lot of community banks are serving their local community, their state or their county. They don't have the need to kind of manage customers that are coming in from different countries or non-national customers, people with different kinds of identities versus a state driver's license or a passport. And so it's to me, the summary is this has a lot to do with what's driving their business forward. If you're a global bank, you need to have a global footprint. You need to accommodate for global customers from everywhere in the world. While if you're a community bank, you don't have to do that. So it kind of suggests that there's not really a divide as much as it's a priority. It's a priority for large banks and regional banks to get there. It's not so much for smaller.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And certainly the data supports that hypothesis, right? So what we see here is that despite where banks sit on that maturity curve, it's clear that the efforts are really being driven by that relentless focus on the customer on the part of the banks, which is, I think, this point you were just making. So you can see here that in fact, 2 out of 3 of the bankers that we surveyed report that customer insights drive their digital banking strategies that are most often focused on key outcomes like new customer acquisition and improved customer loyalty and retention. That was also mentioned by about 6 in 10 respondents. Some of the other drivers for these digital banking initiatives include things like keeping pace with competitors. And that's not surprising, given that we know that newcomers to the market are prioritizing digital first, CX focused experiences, and really kind of forcing those traditional players to adapt to survive. And then another key driver is reducing friction in the customer journey. And I think notably, these results are pretty similar across banks of various types and sizes. And I think what that tells us is that the customer demand for better, more seamless banking services is really the key driver for change, and failure to adapt can be a real blocker to growth. So Snigdha, I'm really curious how customer centricity shapes your own strategy and product development efforts at Remitly.
Yeah, so I think customer centricity is one of our core company values and is really at the heart of everything that we do here at Remitly. We start by identifying customer pain points and really work backwards backwards from there. So the feedback we hear from our customers is that the traditional financial services today aren't designed for them. A lack of credit history, language barriers, predatory banking practices really impact our customers' ability to access these financial services and build and grow wealth. And so here at Remitly, we're continually trying to understand the opportunities that exist and how we can bridge those gaps by building better products for our customers to really deliver peace of mind and offer the most trusted financial services to our customers. And so our product teams here are regularly speaking to customers. We're shadowing our customer support associates to identify issues. We're diving through data and really understanding market trends that are shaping the industry. And so with that, a few themes which we've observed over the past few months have been a really big shift towards adoption of digital services and digital financial services, particularly with COVID, and that trend has continued. We're also seeing customer expectations constantly evolving, and these expectations are really being set by consumer apps that they're using every day. So think about the Amazons and the Ubers of the world, where customers expect instant experiences, where they can have a package delivered to them halfway across the world, and that's the same expectation with money. I think another key theme which we're seeing that's continuing is just customers want a streamlined customer experience, but not at the cost of compromising security and privacy. And so with that, our product teams take that feedback and just those learnings, and we're working to build a product strategy which has a few key pillars. The first and foremost being trust and safety. The second, convenience and personalization. And the third is, how do we build speed into our product offering as well?
That's really interesting. Can you share a few more details about how you're doing that specifically? You can give us an example or two.
Yeah, definitely. So with trust and safety, we're constantly investing in our security systems to really protect customers and their data. We're investing deeply into our machine learning models to make sure we can detect bad activity on our platforms. With regards to convenience and personalization, we're really taking a deep look at the customer journey, and we're A/B testing these experiences and trying to understand local requirements so we can really personalize and tailor that customer journey. And then with speed, we're, like I said, customer expectations are moving towards instant, so 24/7, 365 days a year. And with that, we're focusing on building instant experiences into our customer journey. So we're enabling instant identity verification experiences. We're working to automate a lot of our back office tasks and enable our systems to make decisions faster so we deliver better products and value to our customers.
That's great. The outside in perspective is really interesting because you're right. I mean, we see that in research all the time, right? A lot of our expectations in the financial services sector for consumers are really being shaped by what they're experiencing in verticals outside of financial services. So really great to hear how you guys are taking that kind of insight and putting it into practice. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I think, there's an important lesson here for the banks joining us today, because where you sit on that digital maturity curve has really important implications for your business. So we noticed in this data a very strong correlation between digital maturity and customer orientation. And more specifically, the data shows that for most banks, there's a tendency to prioritize and invest in existing customers. But the more digitally mature institutions are really able to look beyond existing customers and prioritize other key segments like high net worth individuals or small business customers. And that, of course, creates new opportunities for customer engagement and acquisition. So Nate, let's start with you here, and just generally, what are your thoughts on that?
Janet, I every time I see this, I am reminded of how maybe I sound like a broken record. I mean, this is a representation of where your customers are, right? So for banks, and especially in this economic environment, things are tightening up. You have story after story of, consolidation. You're going to focus on where you can make the most pay in the shortest amount of time, where you're going to get the most value from the dollars you spend on transforming your bank. And it should be no surprise that for those that are leading the way, existing customers are a priority. You have a checking account, but not a savings. You have a checking and a savings, but not a CD. CD rates now are higher than they've been in probably 20 years. So there's no surprise to me. Again, back to the whole point, I think Snigdha made it really well at Remitly. You're listening to and understanding where your customers are and what they need and what you can offer them as the shortest path to success and growth for your bank. Same thing with the other categories. You have high net individuals as a emerging or leading institutions targeting or going after those folks. It kind of falls into the same category. If you've got a high net worth individual that has only one account type with you, the chances of expanding that relationship are dramatically improved than trying to go find a net new one. So again, I think in summary, this just tells us that banks are really focused on, especially those that are leading and transforming their organizations, they're focused on where they can add the most value to the opportunity ahead of them.
Absolutely. And Snigdha, to Nate's point, you guys have a very active voice of the customer sort of approach to your business, it sounds like, right? Very customer centric. So how have your efforts, and particularly your own digital transformation efforts at Remitly, impacted your ability to serve a broader cross-section of customers?
Yeah, so I think like Nate mentioned, we're constantly speaking to our customers and really being customer-centric to understand what our customers' pain points are and trying to identify those opportunities. In addition to that, over the past 10 years, Remitly has invested into building a really strong technical foundation and a great data strategy. And so with that strong technical foundation, we're able to launch products and features at a faster pace to our customers. And with a great data strategy, we're able to identify insights, specifically our analyst team and our business teams. They're able to dive into that data and really understand new use cases, how customers are using our product, identify new cohorts, and all of those learnings are shared back with our product teams. And so as a result of both of these, a strong technical foundation and a great data strategy, we're able to really accelerate that flywheel of growth where we can launch products to our customers, learn from them, and then really iterate on building better products and delivering more value to our customers.
That's great. I mean, it really sounds like a really great and powerful kind of iterative cycle that you have going there that allows you guys to constantly change and adapt, which is so important, right? Because progress against any of those types of initiatives always come with some degree of challenge, right? And in fact, what we saw here is that the hurdles to implement and analyze digital improvements are weighing on financial institutions, from the small community banks to the big names on Wall Street to fintechs like Remitly. And what our banks responding to this survey reported is that they're having issues with everything from outdated core systems that make it difficult to improve or customize digital offerings, to challenges maintaining compliance requirements, to finding the right talent, and remediating fraud and cybersecurity threats. And even once organizations execute on a key digital goal, like adding a new feature to their mobile app, many still lack the metrics to accurately measure the incremental value of those digital investments to their organization. So Nate, what are some of your thoughts on those challenges?
Yeah, selfishly, I was excited to see these challenges in this order because Onfido can help. I mean, we help our customers combat and identify fraud and improve their fraud posture. You want to let as many good customers in as you can in order to acquire customers and grow those ones you have. And you want to prevent, bad actors from entering your system and accessing your services. And Onfido helps banks do that. We also help with integration. You got legacy systems. We provide a SDK and API. I've been told by at least a handful of our customers that our documentation is second to none. So we help with the 3 out of the first 4. Unfortunately, we can't really help with retaining and attracting skilled talent. But one of the things that's not surprising, these are complex subjects. Fraud is not a race that prevention of fraud, for instance, is not a race that you ever ultimately win, right? We all know that deep fakes and all of the new things that are coming along are pushing the envelope of what's possible. And And banks especially need to be with partners that can help them combat that and stay ready. Same with compliance. I think that was a really interesting one, the fourth one on your list there, Janet. Especially for those global and regional banks who are trying to operate in more than one country. In the US, we have a driver's license and some of us have passports. You go to the EU and everybody has, not everybody, but a lot of folks have multiple passports. They kind of move between countries very easily and seamlessly. You have to accommodate for all those different document types, verify that you're a real human being and all these things to be compliant. And the compliance and regulatory rules change country by country. And so it's not surprising that that's challenging, and you have to find partners that can help navigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may not be directly helping with talent, but we have seen evidence in a lot of our research that banks that are investing in modernized technology, of all types, they tend to have better employee experiences, and oftentimes it helps them attract really key talent, especially technical talent. So there can be that impact as well. I think it's important to note that some of these challenges become less prominent or less top of mind, I guess, as institutions advance their digital maturity, but others become even more top of mind. And for example, cybersecurity and identifying and remediating fraud and other threats, as well as integrating legacy systems. Those are significant or moderate challenges for nearly everyone surveyed. Where we did see some key differences is for those that are early in their digital journey, like budget constraints, lack of experience with new tech, and reliance on fintechs are more commonly viewed as obstacles to advancing digital initiatives. But Snigdha, cybersecurity fraud, it's such a critical and universal challenge for banks and fintechs alike. I'd be really curious to understand how Remitly is addressing that challenge.
Yeah, so since day one, Remitly's invested in fraud prevention and compliance controls, and it's really one of our unique differentiators. And as platforms grow and scale, they attract malicious actors. And I think one of the interesting things is fraudsters are probably your most experienced users. They're your power users. They'll know the ins and outs of your product better than even your product team knows it. And so with that in mind, for our teams here at Remitly, protecting our customers and their data is crucial. And a few ways we do that is by investing in machine learning and behavioral analytics to really tailor and control the experience for our customers. We also use a lot of mitigations in our experiences. So things like biometric checks, document verification checks, 3DS, and we layer these in with state-of-the-art data around IP address, geolocation, to really help us understand and verify customer identities. In addition to that, we have state-of-the-art fraud prevention and fraud detection tools, and we use both in-house and off-the-shelf vendors to really augment that data and help detect bad activity on our platforms. And I think the most important thing is our risk product teams have a really strong collaboration with our compliance teams, and we work really closely to go beyond just the regular standard KYC and really work to at the heart of KYC to launch really advanced KYC strategies where we truly can verify customer identities on our platform. And so I think all of these really help Remitly have a very secure platform and just a great experience for our customers as well.
Yeah, it's impressive. It sounds like an incredibly comprehensive strategy. And you mentioned a little bit about compliance in there. So I want to dig a little deeper into that, because we asked banks responding to characterize their compliance needs. And what we found is that the level of confidence in meeting those requirements is highest among those with a smaller geographic footprint, as you would expect, right? 2 times as many global national banks are likely to report struggling to keep up or meet compliance requirements in all locations compared to regional banks. So, it's 2 times as many on those large banks versus those regional banks. So why, Nate, do you think that's such an important point for business leaders who are trying to advance these digital transformation efforts? You touched on this a little bit early on in our conversation, but can you expand on that a little?
Yeah, with the rise of, I hate to bring up COVID, but going back to 2020, when everybody went online, we all were at home now, and everything had to be done remotely, and you didn't walk into your bank branch.
Right.
A lot of that stayed with us. We got used to it. We got comfortable with it. We expect it now, and there's benefits. Some of it's some of the things that came along with COVID, like wearing masks, kind of people didn't like that. But for those that had never thought they wouldn't just go to their bank or go to their doctor in person, realizing that they could do that all online became an enlightening thing for customers. And so that means that you had this rise of everyone was on the internet, everyone was on these services digitally. Well, where do fraudsters and bad actors go? They go where the money is. And when everyone's operating online, then that was a rise in fraud and a rise in fraudsters and bad actors, kind of right along with all of us going online. And then came the regulatory frameworks and the compliance kind of legislation in various countries, states, and municipalities. So all of those kind of the boats all rose with the tide there. And so it's not surprising now that even if you're a US based bank, but you're expanding into Central and South America, for example, that second row, you're suggesting that you have a good handle on that so far, but you're struggling in 20% of the time because you just expanded the number of documents and the compliance footprint that you have to be compliant with Mexico versus Costa Rica versus and so on, right? That it just compounds the problem or the challenge. And so I think, ultimately you have to find partners that can help you navigate that. The landscape is very complex and new regulations come out, I don't want to say every day, but very often. In the US, they're changing. In Europe, they're changing and changing all the time. We have Etsy now, which Onfido is compliant with, but there's the rise of kind of qualified electronic signature or QES, which partners of ours like DocuSign are leading the charge around. So there's a lot of understanding to be had that's regulatory, and banks have to, if you're trying to expand beyond kind of your back door or your community, you have to be ready to kind of face that. Even if you're just crossing a state, different states in the US have different regulatory requirements, and knowing what those are and navigating that can be a challenge. And so this doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And I mean, COVID was certainly an accelerant to all of that, right? I mean, it definitely put banks and other organizations into a place where they had to very quickly innovate to keep pace with customer needs and expectations. And then the compliance piece and the security piece sort of had to catch up to that progress. And as you pointed out, Nate, your ability to be compliant, to keep up with those requirements can have a significant impact on your overall digital readiness. But what we saw is that only a minority of banks, about 30%, strongly agree that they have the tools in place that they need to meet all of those regulatory compliance needs. And that's a number that drops to just 17% among financial institutions who are just getting started on that digital journey. And so I think that really highlights an important gap, given 3 out of 4 banks identified compliance as a challenge to progress. It was one of the key challenges. So lack of access to tools to effectively address those kinds of needs could further slow digital progress. So Snigdha, global company, global footprint with your services, how does compliance impact your own product roadmap and digital strategy? And I guess what's your approach at Remitly to ensuring that you're meeting all the regulatory requirements that you need to?
Yeah, so we operate in 170 countries around the world. And with that scale and complexity, compliance challenges are definitely top of mind for our product teams here. Having an international presence means really trying to understand those local requirements. And like Nate mentioned, they can vary widely from one country to another. And so with that in mind, the way Remitly has really thought about building our product offering is we think about enabling a more global minimum standard, a common set of regulations that are there in our product. And as we learn about more local requirements and regulations, we have capabilities in our product to really flex and integrate those local requirements into the customer experience. So really building a product that allows for this flexibility where it can adjust to meet global requirements, as well as those more tailored local requirements, helps us stay compliant as well as really have a localized experience for our customers.
So Snigdha, can you comment on how frequently you guys are looking at compliance changes to inform your own product roadmap? Is that something that you guys are looking at on a rolling basis?
Yeah, that's definitely top of mind for our teams. And the way we do that is really strongly partnering with our compliance teams to keep ahead of any new regulations that are coming. And then also working actively with our business teams and our analyst teams to identify customer data and really understand the pain points that they're encountering in the experience. And so with all of that information, we really work to tailor our experiences, localize them, make sure that these experiences are compliant on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and that really ties back to what you said early on about just how much you guys have invested in data. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that piece of information. One thing that I think is really important for everyone to recognize, and I think a lot of us understand this inherently, is that banks are looking to advance all of these priorities, and in particular their fraud prevention efforts, with their efforts to acquire new customers. So it's a real balancing act for sure, and it's one that many banks agree can benefit from the use of digital identity verification, right? So we see that the majority of banks here are telling us that it's equally important to balance fraud prevention with customer acquisition, and 80% feel like digital identity verification is an effective way for helping to onboard customers and prevent fraud. So Snigdha, this is a challenge for banks, but also for fintechs, really for any business. So how are you balancing acquiring customers with protecting those customers and their data at Remitly?
Yeah, so finding a balance between acquiring new customers and preventing fraud is crucial for any company. And I think it's really important here for risk teams to partner really closely with growth and marketing teams to understand their strategy of acquiring new customers, as well as partnering closely with other product teams across the company who are launching new features and products across different regions. And for these teams also to really understand that the risk product teams are working to protect customers, their data, and the integrity of our platforms. And so a few ways here at Remitly, we really focus on the new customer onboarding journey, and we work to enable instant identity verification experiences and real-time detection capabilities. We're also hyper-focused on identifying just the right amount of information to ask customers during their onboarding, and really deferring a lot of information that might not be needed at onboarding to a post-onboarding flow. And so this critical balance really helps us acquire new customers and retain those customers as well. I think a critical piece is also as we iterate on our machine learning models and our rules, there are instances where we do get false positives. And so how do product teams really think about building experiences for these legitimate customers? We really focus on making sure we have good messaging in our product for customers to help them understand we're protecting them, their data, and then also enabling experiences that help customers resolve these issues when they do encounter them.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about technology as we sort of wrap up our conversation today. And specifically in the state of digital banking research, we wanted to really look at the sentiment around technology that banking leaders view as critical to advancing their digital initiatives. We know tech alignment's a key ingredient to fostering digital transformation, and digital transformation in banking is being fueled by a variety of technologies that can help banks better serve their customers. So if you look at this list here, what we see is that among the digitally driven initiatives that are sort of taking up space in banking executives' minds this year are things like digital real-time payments, fraud mitigation, digital identity, and real-time data and analytics. So Snigdha, real-time payments tops the list, and that's followed closely by enhanced security and fraud mitigation. So how are you thinking about those technologies, and more specifically, the intersection of those technologies at Remitly?
Yeah, so we know faster payments means faster fraud, and I believe real-time detection and our ability to deploy fraud strategies quickly is going to be key for this. I think another thing that we're seeing is, product teams and companies have really focused on streamlining the customer experience. And with a shift to real-time payments, we may see instances where a little bit of friction is appreciated by customers, specifically those sending a large amount of money. And I think another piece which we're seeing is like fraudsters are constantly innovating. They're using new technologies like AI and Gen AI to really perform scams and phishing. And so with that, we anticipate greater collaboration across the board with companies, as well as creating products that help educate customers on these instances and really keeping our systems safe and secure.
I love what you just said about a little bit of friction is appreciated by customers. There's so much conversation always about reducing friction in the customer journey, but I think you make a really interesting and valid point about, especially in the case of your business, a little bit of friction is probably a good thing. So Nate, what do you see as some of the key trends to watch here?
Yeah, I love that comment, by the way, the little bit of friction sometimes to help, again, it goes back to that customer centricity thing. As a person who sends payments, am I comfortable with a little more friction if I'm sending, $1,000 versus $100? Yes, I am. So that's a really good take on that. Look, I think, again, selfishly was not surprised to see digital payments, security and fraud, digital identity, these things being critically kind of part of the initiatives for state-of-the-art digital banking, for sure. And I think Snigdha talked about this, as you did, Janet, as well, the balance between acquiring customers and doing so in a seamless, frictionless, low-calorie way for customers, while mitigating risk, mitigating fraud, eliminating bad actors. It's a balancing act that I think every bank and every customer of ours tells us they face. And so the more we can do to help them navigate that balance, the better they perform. What I thought was surprising, and I think you've done some more recent stuff, was how low on this list AI was. But I think you guys did something in July, right, Janet, that kind of would have shown this at a much higher level.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for pointing that out, because this research was conducted sort of just as all those conversations about ChatGPT and generative AI were really starting to kind of, multiply. And you and I actually talked about that when we shared this research at our digital banking event. But we did some research more recently in the last month or so, and we asked banking leaders what technologies they're most excited about for the next 2 years, and AI and generative AI in particular were at the top of that list. So it is starting to pop more when we ask similar questions. It doesn't surprise me. I'm sure it doesn't surprise Snigdha. She mentioned it as well. But, the application of generative AI, it applies to like almost every one of those other rows, right? Like on Onfido, we use generative AI and AI to do anti-bias detection. So we know, we can determine some of those deep fakes, and we can make sure that we're not applying any bias because of glare or low light or different skin colors and things. All of that is the AI technology is being used to assure that the right customers get in and the bad actors don't. And the more we can use that technology to automate that and do it in a fair and unbiased way, the better it is for our customers and the better it is for theirs as well. But I think it is interesting that one row kind of spans all of the other rows, right? It's like a crosshatch of everything else. Yeah, absolutely. AI is definitely going to enable all those things. And it's going to be so interesting. I mean, it sounds like Remitly is already doing a lot with machine learning and a lot of these models, but it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out over the next few years and exactly where we see the impact of some of these new technologies on banks and other businesses moving forward. So with that, I want to just say thank you very much to both of you for joining us today. It's been really fun talking about this with you, Nate and Snigdha. So thank you for joining us, Snigdha. Thank you for Nate, and thank you to Onfido for sponsoring the research and today's event. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.